So I am Michelle Carlisle from the East Central Ohio Educational Service Center, and we are excited to have you all join our second virtual workshop series. And my session today on quality materials, quality matters, is the first in a series today. And then the second day of the live instruction will be on February 3rd. So we're excited to have you here, and I will go ahead and get started. Please forgive me though, I am going to literally be bouncing between two different screens to help share information. So it will look just a bit awkward. If you didn't get a chance to do the QR code, there's the QR code. And I had also put that link in the chat. And then if you're planning on taking this for graduate credit, this is on the workshop form. So you don't have to take the information directly off this slide. It's more of a reminder, but on the workshop form where you're getting each of those Zoom links at the bottom are the instructions for the graduate credit. Leslie Charles is coordinating that. The credit will be issued from Miss Kingham University, but it's important that everything gets sent to Leslie Charles at Miss Kingham Valley Educational Service Center. The payment, the form, that information sheet all needs to go to Leslie at the ESC, at Miss Kingham Valley ESC, and then she will submit that to the university. The assignment's the two-page reflection paper, and you need to watch the 13 videos and or attend them live in order to be eligible for graduate credit. There's the potential we'll add another session or two. Our team is actually leaving this weekend for New Orleans for the FETC conference, Future in Technology Education conference. So the 9 of us will be attending this technology convention. So if we bring back additional information that we feel capable of getting another presentation or two ready, there may be additional sessions added to that February 3rd or shortly thereafter. We were just getting ready to leave on Sunday and all of this taking place. We just weren't able to add more to today. So there may be more information coming after next week. Instructional materials do matter. Instructional materials have a direct impact on student learning. It's critically important that students and staff have access to high quality instructional materials. And I know that all of you are familiar with InfoOhio. InfoOhio has a wealth of resources, but they're also a very strategic partner in accessing and making available to all of our teachers and students these high quality materials as well. So everybody believes, and the studies believe, and InfoOhio is standing behind the fact that every Ohio student deserves the opportunity to learn from high quality, standards aligned instructional materials. And those are important to help students become resilient, lifelong learners who contribute to the society. Ed Reports, which is one of the tools available to you as a teacher through InfoOhio, is a national reviewer of instructional materials. And Ed Reports, as part of their database and catalog of both criteria for evaluating your own textbook selections within your school districts, as well as a standard for any of us to evaluate materials against what Ed Reports is laying out in their rubrics. It's a national review of instructional materials, and this is some of the research Ed Report shares. Instructional materials not only affect student learning, but also the choices and the behaviors of teachers while teaching. One of the top ranked programs in grades 4 and 5, one of the top ranked math programs, showed students achievement gained by more than 3 percentiles. But not all students in the state, not all students in the nation have access to the same textbook materials because of funding, resources, buy-in, and scalability within their school districts. Student learning outcomes are improved when high quality materials are used and implemented. And that data is in educational ed resources, and it comes from Jackson and McCarran in 2017. And as I switch the slides behind me manually, then I also have to switch to my notes. So teachers don't always have access to information about the high quality instructional materials. Where are they getting quality matters? Where are they finding quality? How are we helping them get to the materials and the resources that allow students quality? It's an ongoing it's an ongoing struggle in today's educational areas. Research also tells us that the quality instructional materials are essential to student success, but only 18% of district available materials are sometimes aligned to standards. This one is the one that stands out for me more pronounced because of where we live and work. Students living in poverty and of color have less access to quality instructional materials. Districts and students with a higher proportion of free and reduced lunch have higher rates of teachers searching online for instructional materials. That's not always a bad thing, but the quality is affected when there aren't rubrics and standards to align that to. So some of this research came from a Fordham Institute study. And in 2019, the teachers were interviewed about why they turned to online sources to get supplemental instructional materials and curriculum. And the first reason was to help students buy into content. Textbooks are boring, students say. Teachers say textbooks are boring too. They might be looking for fun activities to do at the beginning of the year, the beginning of the unit, or to culminate a unit. And they also look for online materials to supplement and to introduce new teaching strategies. A second reason is that supplemental materials for teachers can provide those enhancement opportunities, allow for and accept differentiated instruction, and provides for the teachers another resource that they may not have in their district. One of the main reasons teachers say they look for resources online through other materials is that they need to fill the gaps where the curriculum may not meet, where the standards may not fully align, or whether their material is outdated enough that those standards there's just a little bit of a gap. And then teachers believe and report that searching online finds time for them that they don't have through traditional means in their school district or school building. And again, that report can be found at Fordham Institute, and it's actually called, again, sorry, I'm out of my studio and reaching, the Supplemental Curriculum Bazaar. Is what's online any good? This research did look at 3 online locations specifically: Teachers Pay Teachers, Read, Write, Think, and Share My Lesson. Universally, Teachers Pay Teachers, in the report and in other reports, materials found on Teachers Pay Teachers are not meeting those quality instructional standards. Read, Write, Think, we do find many of the Read, Write, Think resources that have been vetted and then available to us in InfoHio as tools and resources. So in the Read, Write, Think and in Share My Lesson, there are rubrics that stand against some of those resources that point to high quality instructional materials. That's not to say using materials from online resources is a bad thing. But what studies are showing us is that the high quality instructional materials matter. Quality materials matter to student engagement, student performance, and student gains. And leveling the playing field to get teachers quality materials is essential. So InfoHio is one of the areas working to help with that, as well as some of those funding sources and projects. Teachers report they spend about 7 to 12 hours a week searching for online instructional materials, including many that are not vetted, not held against a rubric or a standard. This PowerPoint presentation that I I have gone through the InfoHio quality materials matters and the instructional high quality instructional materials guidelines. And from that, we're actually able to take the rubrics we're given and continue to apply those rubrics to individual materials that we find. Once those rubrics have been applied, the instructional materials reviewers then are able to post additional resources for Ohio teachers and students on InfoHio. So what that does is there's a rubric, there's a training that's been involved, and then materials are measured against those rubrics, labeled consistently, and then shared through InfoHio. This particular teacher said when he was teaching business and technology, he personally spent about 15 hours a week looking for resources. He had no curriculum and he developed it himself, which is often the case with those of us teaching in fields that aren't the standard core. And sometimes even when it's the standard core, we're searching. The RAND Corporation's American Teacher Panel Survey found that all teachers interviewed reporting going to the internet to search for materials. And the teachers that were surveyed said 95% used Google, 77% used Pinterest, 73% used Teacher Pay Teachers. 55% of the ELA teachers for these studies reported they use Teachers Pay Teachers for curriculum at least one time per week. Teachers reported they're supplementing their formal instructional materials, and they're also using additional materials from themselves or their colleagues. So on the next slide, we start to see, and again, this is one of those slides that may not act the same since I've had to share it through so many different resources. When we're looking for and trying to find materials from other resources, that's common practice. I did it for this presentation this morning. I've used it for this afternoon's presentation on reading progress. You know, when there's high quality out there, it's difficult to justify reinventing the wheel, right? That's okay. That's not a bad thing. It's making sure that we're able to level the playing field with the materials and resources available to bring students materials that would be afforded to them in a district with a different financial situation. One of the frameworks, and this is one of the frameworks that I referred to just a bit ago, that the InfoHio instructional materials rubric. Ohio Materials Matter is a grant-funded program that's looking for aligning and finding access to curriculum, online textbooks, and other quality materials, and then bringing it to a location where our teachers are more readily available and easily able to find it. That is InfoHio, and that is the InfoHio resources, and then through InfoHio, the open space channels. Ohio Materials Matter and Ed Reports reviews look at the more comprehensive and curricular materials. The rubric that any of the InfoHio trainers have been trained to use, check for the quality on a wide range of criteria. We're looking for explicitly aligned to the standards. We're looking for, and this is just a sample. So this is a screenshot of a section of the rubric that InfoHio materials reviewers are using when they're looking at an online resources that's been recommended, a new textbook selection that's been shared, materials that have become available through open educational resources, free and fair use, which we'll talk about that in just a minute. When those resources meet the free and fair usage requirements and criteria, this is part of the rubric that's being used to vet materials to then list them for teachers in InfoHio. And things like it has to be aligned explicitly to the Ohio content standards. There needs to be crosswalks visible to the reviewer to make it easier for the teacher looking at that lesson plan, that activity, that resource, that video, whatever it might be. We're looking for research-based instructional design. We're looking for materials that are accessible to all. If it has a paid component, it will not meet the criteria. It doesn't fill the rubric, because quality materials that are free and accessible to all of our students and staff is the tenant. So if it's a paid content, it might be great. It doesn't meet what InfoOhio is looking at and what Ohio is looking at to bring fair and equitable quality materials to all students and staff. So not just fair usage rates, is it really able to be used for free because you're a teacher? Or are you just saying that because you think you understand copyright? It's also looking at, is it really free and fair for the students? Is it really freely accessible to the teachers? The rubric also looks at some flexibility. Does the teacher have some flexibility in the design? Is the lesson plan, for instance, deliverable in that the teacher can adapt it to meet his or her own students' needs without significant changes? Is there differentiation? Does it look for diverse learners? So it's looking for those standards that we're held against. And if you are an evaluator in OTES or have been evaluated in the OTES rubric, you'll see some of that rubric language reappear as InfoOhio materials researchers are reviewing and researching the materials as well. And again, I apologize for going back and forth with my screens and my slides. So this screen is small with what I had to share it with for you, and I apologize about that. This is a visual of what you'll see in the exchange in InfoOhio if material has been reviewed. You're going to see areas where it meets or exceeds in the rubric. It will show you where it doesn't meet or it does fall short of areas of the rubric. And the rubric is freely visible to each of you as well. Once material has been reviewed, for instance, it's going to show also, it gets a badge if it exhibits accelerated learning, and if it also helps with hybrid materials, hybrid instruction. You can't see this screen, like I said, but the $10 make 100 is a lesson activity. And Amber Torresiva, who's now a principal at St. Clairsville, actually was the reviewer for this particular resource that's now available for you to search in the educators tools in InfoOhio. I apologize because again, I'm moving between several screens here this morning. So this was a worksheet that was a completed review. So it would meet quality matters. It would meet quality review materials. It shows 4 of the categories. And it gives the details of the evaluation itself. Obviously, you can't read that text, and I apologize. But it shows that it's got the standards of alignment. It's 3 of 6. It meets the criteria. So it has research-based strategies. It has flexibility for the teacher, and it has usability for the teacher and the students. If you're in InfoOhio and you're finding this resource, which is linked in the reviews as well, it actually takes you to the lesson plan, the PDF files, if they exist, of the support materials, or it will have links to online resources that go with that material and lesson. So when material is found in InfoOhio that meets those quality matters, those high quality instructional materials guidelines, it then becomes a container for you. You're not going to have to jump in and out to all of the different resources. If it's there in InfoOhio, the links that support that lesson plan or material will be in that material with it. These same types of standards have also been applied to full-scale programs, so to speak. So, of course, Ed Resources or Ed Reports. Ed Reports is a program. Ed Reports is comprehensive database software designed for curriculum teams that have something in front of them to evaluate objectively textbook materials and resources when salespeople are bringing them to the district. But from Ed Reports, they've expanded that to apply those rubric technologies, those rubric dialogue, those rubric standards so that you, the educator, can begin to look at individual resources instead of only just evaluating full curriculum as a curriculum team would have done in a day. If you're interested at all in understanding more about the high quality instructional materials and how they can supplement your classroom, InfoHio has free walkthroughs. They are short. By short, it depends on the material and content, but you're looking at probably a 1 to 3 hour commitment on a self-paced course. And you can find those in InfoHio, Educator, and the learning pathways. And so they have learning pathways for these types of self-paced trainings. And in the high quality instructional materials training, it takes you through where in InfoHio it's easiest to find already vetted high quality materials. They all are. And also how you can apply some of that information when you're searching for materials yourself. When you're out online and you're looking for other things, it gives you some tools to help you apply that learning to what you're using in your classroom. Now, open access and open educational resources. Why did I put this in the presentation of quality matters? Well, there's a long-standing belief that we're poor teachers, and because we're teachers and we're providing academic instruction and we're providing education, we get to use anything we find for free because it's got teachable moments. That is patently false. It is for sure 100% a copyright violation to take any snippet of any movie that's been produced, such as, I'm trying to think of a new one, but we'll just use Maverick. For aerospace and dynamics and G-forces. That's science, that's physics, that's a great concept, and proof of concept in the video or in the movie with Tom Cruise, who's actually doing his own G-force work. I'm going to use it to teach in physics today because I'm a teacher and I'm allowed. No, that is not the case. Copyright material is not just blanket allowed to be used for teachers in classrooms. Open access and open educational resources is what allows you, the educator, to use materials for free without violation of copyright. So what is OER? OER is open educational resources. They are teaching, learning, and resource materials in any medium, digital, online, print, or otherwise, that reside in the public domain or have been released under an open license that permits no cost access, use, adaptation, redistribution, and by others with no or limited restrictions. You will occasionally find something that is labeled OER, open educational resource, that is allowed to be used for anything for your classroom, shared with teachers, shared with others, but it may have a limitation such as, but you don't get to profit off this free work. That's not a limited restriction, but just think of it like that. Open educational resources are any materials, medium, printed, digital, or otherwise, that reside in public domain or have been released under an open license that permit no cost access, use, and adaptation or redistribution to others with no or limited restrictions. And typically, but not always, a limited restriction can be considered, I've given this for free, this textbook company has put this out as PDF, it's under OER. Do not turn my free work into something that's profiting you personally. That's a common limitation that you'll see. Now, I apologize. This is a video. If I were in my real presentation studio, we would have been able to watch her at this point. So you're just going to need to give me just a second to get to that slide, and then I'm going to play this short video. I'm not always super crazy about playing videos of others when I'm doing a presentation, but she does a really nice job of explaining this. So again, I apologize. You just have to give me a second here to get this, and then I'm going to share it.
You know SEO. What if you could do it smarter and faster?
With Wix, you get a site.
OER are open educational resources. These are materials that have had an open license applied to them.
So it could be a full textbook, a single unit, a worksheet, an interactive activity, anything that helps with teaching and learning.
They can be printed out into physical copies for a very low cost and given to the students. It can also be an online resource as well.
So open educational resources include not only openly licensed materials, but also resources that are in the public domain. This includes everything from photos from NASA to reports published by the government and even things like bills and laws.
OER are different than traditional published resources because they come with the license to make adaptations to the material kind of baked into the resource from the beginning.
Open educational resources can be considered as free plus permissions. And those permissions are 5 R's. You can reuse, remix, revise, retain, and redistribute the content.
Reuse means to take a resource and use it in any context you want. Remix means taking multiple resources and mixing them together and creating a new resource out of it. Revise means to make a copy of the resource and actually change it and adapt it to the local context. Retain means to keep and control a copy of the resource forever. And finally, redistribute means the right to freely share whatever you've created.
Okay, again, going back and forth. Whew. So she does just a nice job of culling together what this means. And again, the link, in at least my head, quality matters. It's important for us to be vetting and finding quality materials and resources to bring to you, the staff, and to us, the teachers. But we also must understand our rights and abilities of what we're able to use under those free and fair licenses. If a resource is not free or openly licensed, it cannot be described as OER. Most examples or most materials accessed through your library subscriptions cannot be altered, remixed, or distributed. These materials require special permission and are therefore not open. Now, is there media and resources that you get from your library that have a different label under the Creative Commons? Yes, absolutely. Open educational resources is, for the most part, free and fair to be redistributed, used, edited, changed, remix, reuse. Creative Commons also allows you, the teacher, to share, but Creative Commons has a different series of available sharing. So the next slide we're going to talk about, it shows the difference between other resources and OER. So if we look at the characteristics between the use of educational materials that teachers often use, we can see more clearly what OER and OER is and is not. Resources found online with all rights reserved under copyright. It is not open license. It could be freely available. It's not modifiable. That means it's not OER. Paid materials from material sharing's websites. Teachers pay teachers, for instance. It is not an open license. The person that is putting the materials and resources on things such as teachers pay teachers is earning a living, earning an income from that. It is not open license. You are not free to share or distribute that. You're not free to use that over and over again. It has a license attached. It's not freely available, and it's oftentimes not editable. Materials that are available through the library, like we talked about, typically they're not open license, but they are free if you have a library subscription. Curriculum materials from publishers. Now here's a difference. Under the Quality Matters project, under the Ohio's push for creating, maintaining, and increasing the availability of quality materials, textbook companies, textbook providers, textbook people culling information and pulling it together collectively are shifting things that are high quality and may have used to have been for sale, and now beginning to put this in Quality Matters areas where teachers and educators and professionals can have access to high quality materials without that subscription. But as a rule, curriculum materials from publishers is also not an open license. Just because your district bought one textbook doesn't mean you can give it 100 to 150 students and share it with everybody in your grade level team. If the license was one book or resource per teacher, that's what you need to be purchasing. Open educational resources, OER. It's open, it's freely available, and it's typically able to be modified. So if you're purchasing materials from major publishers, for instance, they will typically fail on all three of the OER criteria. That's what originally prompted open educational materials movements to begin with. Now, she referred to this in the video. The 5 R's. You can retain it, you can keep it, you can make your own copies, you can reuse it any way you want, you can revise it, you can adapt it, you can modify it, you can improve upon it, you can remix it, and you can share it with others. Now, like I said, the caveat to sharing is typically, don't assume you can take an OER and then profit from it somehow. That's not really the intent or the design. Why are we choosing through OER? Why choose that? Well, it gives us improved access to learning opportunities. It shares knowledge and learning by resources. It joins this international community. It can save time, cut costs, and contribute to the learning and improved quality of learning in your own classroom. It seeks to grow the pool of learning resources, which goes around those barriers of financial, geographical, rurality, high free reduced lunch counts, all of those things that prevent a pool of and a wealth of resources. Open educational resources are trying to work to circumvent that somehow. Now, I do have another YouTube clip, and again, I don't normally use a lot of others' videos, but there's some important things that are said in these that if I would have recreated it, I would have just literally been copying it. So again, I apologize for a second while I switch to sharing a third screen. Those of you that joined late, I had significant technical difficulties last night and into today. And so I'm in a completely different studio with 3 different devices. None of them are connected, and we're making it work. So
education is vital.
Did I share the sound on that?
It enriches our lives, sustains our communities, and
you
helps
able
us
to hear
grow
the sound?
into the future. At least, that's the idea. Truth is, education as we know it is failing millions around the world. Take Tundo, for example. He's a bright kid with big dreams, but the education he's getting is holding him back. You see, Tundo's school can't afford the latest learning materials, so he has to work with textbooks that are completely outdated. To make matters worse, Tundo's teacher is also left using outdated information, often without even realizing it. And even if he manages to overcome this and gets into college, the cost of all the lessons, books, and notes he needs will land Tundo in a pile of debt. It's not just Tundo. This situation is being replayed in schools and colleges all around the world. So much for education for all. So how can we fix things? The answer lies in open education. Open education is a global movement that aims to bring quality education to teachers and students everywhere. The basic idea is to put top-notch learning materials on the web that anyone can access for free. You see, unlike textbooks, open ed resources can always be revised, so they're never out of date. Teachers are given free license to adapt them and improve them, giving students exactly what they need to achieve their dreams. As all open ed resources are free to share, schools are no longer limited by where they are or how much money they have. And if you think open education doesn't make the grade, think again. Open ed resources are being created by the world's most respected institutions and scholars. From the highest branches of government right down to grassroots level, open education is changing lives. Visit creativecommons.org/education to learn more.
So that is, like I said, it was actually a contest that was put out there to kind of inform about OER and Creative Commons. That's what we're in the business of doing. We all have books on our shelves that we can't use the pages of because they're outdated, but it wasn't that subject year to get new books. I don't know if you watch the sitcom Abbott Elementary. It's in the flavor of The Office, but it's an inter-district elementary school in the city of Philadelphia. And in the first episode, the main character has a social studies textbook and she shows the camera, well, this book is a little old. We've had 2 presidents since the last time the book was purchased. And on the back 2 pages of the book and in the back cover, she's put the next 2 presidents' pictures in the book. It may have been 3. It might have been, but anyway, we all live that. We're living that here. And the ability to take textbooks digitally with Chromebooks has helped with that, but there's still more. And so this push to open educational resources has really begun to drive what's going to be available and what is available for you, the teacher. And InfoHio is doing a great job in helping us access that quickly, easily, and with fidelity. So I really appreciate that the state continues to invest in InfoHio for each of us. So open licenses are obviously openly licensed. They are allowed to be used. So when you create something, or more accurately, something in the form of a drawing, a blog, an article, a poem, music, anything that you create is automatically covered by copyright law in the United States. There isn't a process for you to go and get the CC stamp if you are the original creator of content. By law in the United States, if you create something, it's copyrighted to you. As such, if someone's using your work without permission, that's not okay. But if you want to share your work and you want to be able to allow others to use it and benefit from that, then it's going to become, you're going to allow it to be openly licensed. OER, under its premise, of course, is that all students and staff can and should have access to quality materials. OER empowers teachers to make a difference, and it's the community of scholars that are working to help expand this. OER gives teachers a way to clearly understand materials that can be freely used and remove the issue of copyright from the equation. So I've mentioned Creative Commons as well. Creative Commons is the standard for open licenses. So if someone or a publisher or a company wants it to be available and they want people to use it freely, but with restrictions, with boundaries, parameters, so to speak. Creative Commons is that standard, and it's a way for licenses to be applied for creators to sort and apply permissions and license terms to the work. that makes it understandable and also allows for sharing and flexible use. It also allows people to retain ownership of their creation, but still share it widely. So when a Creative Commons license is applied, it just sets some boundaries and parameters. So here are some of the Creative Commons guidelines that you'll see. So open access, OER, public domain. It's the biggest, free and open. So royalty-free music is a great example. If you hear the same tones, for instance, if you listen to a lot of different podcasts and you hear the same tones, they're grabbing royalty-free public domain music in counts of 8 and 16 to apply to their podcast, because they're allowed to do that. Even if they're monetized, even if they're making money from their podcast, if they're using public domain, they're allowed to use that. So another Creative Commons attribution is by attribution. It's being shared by you. So it's allowed to be used if it's been shared by. Share alike is another, good grief, using different screens makes me lose my mind. The share alike is another attribution that's applied. So it's Creative Commons, it's shared and can be shared alike. It's the most flexible of them in terms of being distributed. Non-commercial, that's a big one. You'll see this a lot. I see this a lot when I'm looking for an image on Google Images. And I may or may not use it in, for instance, one of the content sessions that we produce here in the studio. It's still teaching and learning materials. It's still standards aligned content. But if a district pays me for that lesson, I need to make sure the materials in that lesson meet these guidelines. So if I'm looking for a free picture real quick, but I might use it for something that's monetized in some way, I'm going to look for something that falls under Creative Commons, but also has commercial. Because if it says non-commercial, it can be used as long as you're not reselling it. So the same thing would apply if you're a teacher that likes to produce materials for Teachers Pay Teachers or Etsy. Great. If you're pulling something under open access that has a Creative Commons license, you can use it if it doesn't say non-commercial. Because if it does say non-commercial, you can't use that for retail when money's exchanged hands for something that you're using it in. And no derivatives is meaning you can use it, but don't change it. Don't modify it. And so if it does say Creative Commons and no derivatives, it typically doesn't meet open access criteria. But it is a Creative Commons label. And you'll see it when you're looking for resources. Open access and OER. So open space is a community of learners within InfoOhio that is responsible for searching, curating, collecting, and sharing these types of open instructional materials. That's where you'll find the high quality instructional materials. And it's available to you when you log into InfoOhio. You can go in the search bar and click and type open space, or it will show up under educators. So open space is a growing community, and it also allows you to find groups that are similar to you. Like, I'm in a Chinese learning group, not because I'm a Chinese teacher, but as a way to bring my Chinese teachers to other Chinese teachers in the state of Ohio. So it is a small group community flavor within open space, but it is also where you're able to easily look for quality matters, high quality instructional materials, and open educational resources that you will then find in the InfoOhio tools. So it's, as you think of using quality materials with your students, it's important to also have an understanding of what you're allowed to use from the wild, wild west, from the internet, from other people, and how it relates to your usage as a responsible educator. If you see one of those licenses or images, those Creative Commons as images, it means you can use them. And you can search for each of those labels to make sure you use them properly. You'll even find them on video sharing sites. You'll find them on places that have videos that can be downloaded. And when you decide you're ready to share your work, you can apply those same license choices to your work as well. Now, we're at 10 till. I've done a ton of talking. I've been a little scattered because of the way I've had to present. For that, I apologize. But I am going to stop and make sure you don't have any questions or comments, and just quickly review what comes next the rest of the day as well. I also put the attendance QR code back on the screen, and I'm going to reshare in the chat the Google form if you need the link instead of scanning that, just to make sure that you fill out your attendance. That will generate your contact hour for this session. And as I had said earlier, it will be the place where you also mark if you have to watch any of these presentations after the fact in the Google Classroom. Other questions or comments? It's kind of a dry topic for 8 a.m. but it's very intriguing to me because I've so recently been involved with it with InfoOhio. And it's important that our educators do know that they do have a growing access to high quality materials that other districts pay a lot of money for or had paid money for in the past. You know, it's important work. So if there are no other questions, we'll end. The next session starts at 9. Because I have all of these other screens making this work this morning, I did not pull up the workshop list, but the next session is at 9, and I think it's Wendy, maybe? Are you at 9, Wendy?
No, the sheet actually says more information will be forthcoming. I think there's a break.
We had a break, right? Because we were originally going to do one of the Adobe sessions, and because Laurel is going to present a beginner and Teresa is going to present an add-on to one of the Adobe tools, they flopped and it opened up that 9 a.m. So you have a break if you're attending, and at 10 o'clock, it's Goose Chase EDU with Leslie. So thanks everyone for joining us. We hope that you're finding some value in these series. We hope that you're learning new things, and we hope you're sharing them with others. I'm going to stop recording.